Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Happy Wednesday. Happy Hump Day. I'm glad you can make it to the show, to 17 and some change. I'm AccuDez17, here to give you my 2 cents. Um, Today, and excuse me while I wake up and while this podcast unravels. Um, Excuse me for having some cobwebs at the moment, but we're going to discuss the pickup arts today. Firstly, before we get into anything else, um, that's going to be the main theme of our discussion. And I'm speaking to you as somebody who is a former member of of those communities, and not necessarily something that I'm proud of, um, but it's I I started the journey for all the right reasons. I um I not It's not unique to me, but uh, as a borderline, and like I said, not unique to me, but like I was looking for my person, so to speak, and and after you know one bad heartbreak in particular, I was a teenager too at the time, right? I was I even I was like barely 16. Like I wasn't even 16 yet. But um heartbreak and and advertisements geared towards, you know, uh, having more success with women. So some dude, David D'Angelo, popped across the feed, and it was on MySpace at the time. And David D'Angelo, um, his his battle cry, so to speak, was uh, attraction is not a choice, and um, what women say they want isn't necessarily what they respond to. He categorized nice guys as wussies overall. He was about being a man, and by being a man, um, he 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 meant not acting needy, and um, he also one of his main things um, was cocky and funny. An approach he took to like flirting or like banter. It was his form of flirting where he would speak as if, I mean, the name's kind of self-explanatory, cocky and funny. So he would kind of use jokes that made him seem slightly arrogant, like challenging. Um, and he would never use any self-deprecating humor. or anything like that. Um, and it was overall um decent idea. Um, it was a good formula, but not everybody could pull it off, and it wasn't congruent with who everybody is as an individual, right? But he said very accurately one time, he said, too much cocky and you come across as an asshole or arrogant, and too much funny and you come across as a clown. And he was uh, advocating for kind of an aloof, confident um, mind frame that has certain expectations. Like, you expect good things to come to you, and from that mindset, you're being challenging and you're being playful and stuff like that. And he, from what I remember, um, he wasn't necessarily um egregious. I mean, I do remember the first few times um I the first few times I encountered his advertisements, I was actually a little taken aback. Um just the way that he was disparaging um being nice and being a gentleman, and I had never even heard of the idea of a man playing like a challenging role or whatever. Um, but that was his thing, you know. And I, I don't have anything much else in regards to him. There's so I was reading his stuff, and then this isn't chronological, but like I do have a list. I just have a rudimentary list of a few of the uh, mainstream pickup artists that I had ran across back in my early days. So I started off, with encountering that individual that I just kind of laid out some details on. And then, not and then, but another person, and this second person is somebody that I don't even name in my book. In my book, I say there are some individuals whose names aren't worth mentioning. Um, I mean, his name's Ross Jeffries. He's as I mean, I don't want to say anything like degrading about him. And now I guess since I said his name out loud, now I can't really. Anyways, I don't like his stuff. How about that? I don't like any of his stuff. I think his material, yeah, I won't attack him as a character. I'll attack his material. I think it's weird. Like, I think it's weird. I think it's off-putting. I think it's and he's like mad like um I mean, and like the visual as well. Like, if you Google him, you'll know what I mean. Like, I'm not a fan. Um, and hold on, I gotta find out like what I can say like about somebody who's like a personality without it being deformation or whatever a uh can I call a semi-famous person ugly and creepy on a podcast? Opinions are generally protected. Presenting opinions as facts is risky. The statement creepy is protected. Well, ugly is considered an opinion. Creepy can be ambiguous and imply harmful. Bro, I think, dude, to me, yeah, anyways. So he did this thing, it was called neuro linguistic programming, which is basically like a form of hypnotism, and he would like hypnotize young women to like want to do shit to him and stuff like that. And like, if you're watching as an outsider, as somebody who's not interested in hypnotizing people to get laid, um, and you're watching, and you're like, what the fudge? And now you have a feeling, and follow that feeling to your stomach, and the stomach, and whoo, Bobby. Um, but yeah, I don't like him. Um, the hypnotist. And then of course you got mystery. Um, of course, you know I think I called him. I don't know. I have to go back and double check. I think I called him the Michael Jordan of pickup in my book, but I meant to call him the Wilt Chamberlain, just because of the irony. Like Chamberlain claimed to have slept with hundreds of women and stuff like that. No, Mystery invented the game as I mean as it exists on today's um medium. I mean, he didn't invent seduction, but I mean, he really modernized pickup, and he invented an entire terminology that is still used to this day. The terminology that he invented is still canon 20 years later. Um, and he had some good ideas. I mean, he was um it worked for him. Like what he was doing was like worked for him. You know what I mean? And of course there's plenty of disparaging things that I could say about the method, and we're gonna get into that. Um but primarily what his approach was um aimed at outdoor venues and gatherings. He wasn't much of a one-on-one type of uh, focus. His focus, he would say that um, beautiful women are rarely found alone, and so he styled his game around talking to what he called sets. groups of women or multiple women or even groups of women and men and stuff like that. And he was a magician by nature. He was actually a pretty effing good magician. Like he could actually do some tricks that are like, wow, what the fudge? Um, and so he kind of blended that into his pickup, and he would tell people to approach a group of women, pick a target beforehand, win over her friends by using pre-planned routines that have demonstrations of higher value built into them. And then once the friends are in the process of winning over the friends, you're gonna, and demonstrating higher value, you're also going to disarm the target by saying things that imply slight disinterest. Uh, where's her off button? And then once you're accepted by the group at some point, you're gonna ask it how everybody knows each other, and then he proceeds to um, ask the group if he can take the girl with him. Um, hey, so and so, me and such like each other. We're gonna go away, something along the lines. And then he has like a whole he breaks it down between the attraction stage and the comfort stage and the seduction stage. Um, and and that's kind of his thing. Um, and he uses magic in these routines and stuff like that. And so then there's another guy named Neil Strauss who whose field name was Style, and he basically just used the mystery method to the T and himself, and um, according to legend and according to himself, had much success. He wrote a book called The Game. It was a New York Times bestseller, um, and it was a big book. It was a huge book, and it kind of really dove into like the lifestyle that these individuals were living at the time. Um, you go to clubs, there's drunk women everywhere. You have an ability to be a storyteller. You know a handful of tricks. You know, like some signs and stuff like that. And you're in an uppity mood. You already have the advantage over like 95% of the dudes. You know what I mean? Um, so I don't think these dudes were like making magic. They were just playing. They just knew how to play the game. It's like basketball, and I'll use basketball as an example, as an analogy later on in the episode as well. But it's like basketball. Like most men don't really know how to play basketball. So like if you know how to play basketball a little bit, like you have an advantage over the average person, right? And it's the same thing with game and shit like that. But there's a lot of issues with it, and like that's why like that's this this episode is gonna touch on that too. I know I'm starting off by kind of introducing some of these people, but I'm gonna get into some of the issues that this community has and stuff like that. The last person that I'm gonna bring up is Dave Wygant. Um, he was somebody that was just about like direct approach, direct opener. But I thought that was pretty okay. For depending on who you are. Um, and a couple other things I'll just touch on real quick before I get into the Q&A. So, there's plenty that's wrong. There's plenty that's wrong with the game. It's I think it dehumanizes women. I think it teaches inauthenticity. I think it promotes narcissism. I think it has people um, uh, performing a song and a dance. It's these are bad enough things as it is, you know. Unfortunately, in a parallel but not exact note, unfortunately, women have a tendency to, especially younger women, um, under 25, before discernment has really kicked in, they have a tendency to conflate um, narcissism and psychopathy uh, with competence. And they find attractive a lot of the traits that um, are hard to distinguish between um, when it comes to s- status. It's tough to distinguish uh, between um, somebody who has has climbed a ladder through bullshit versus authenticity. Um, and you know, there's also separate games to be played for ugly people versus handsome people, and which is again another completely different thread. But it's just kind of that's what I got on my notes, and I was kind of running out of steam with the psychopath gripe. There's definitely a difference in handsome game versus ugly game, and that's where I was going to use my basketball player analogy again. Um, so I mean, being ugly is like being a short basketball player when it comes to like talking to women and stuff like that. Um, um, it's just like being a short person, but like, nah, it's just a disadvantage. Like you gotta make up for it with other things. You know what I'm saying? And when you're a hand and a lot some of those other things involve like more fantastic wordplay and stuff like that, and being able to like use your words to create imagery and to get women into like certain moods and to use your words to like pump yourself up and stuff like that. um Whereas like handsome dudes, like they don't even really gotta talk, like they don't even really gotta say words and stuff like that. And so there's that. That exists, you know. um so let me get into the Q and A's here. I got some Q and A's. These aren't blind today. These are ones that I have received and I've answered. So I should be able to. We can rip these off. Um, we can kind of like rip these off and stuff like that. So bam, we're gonna go here, and then I'm gonna scroll, and did you know Ecudes 17, the number 17, ECUDES, the number 17 at yahoo.com. You can send me questions, and I will answer them, um, either here on this podcast, or if there's enough demand, on a newsletter, um, Ecudes17 at yahoo.com. So let's see. It says, when you think of pickup arts, what comes to mind first? Do you see it more as social skill building or more as manipulation? And I said, if you're smart enough to extract the social skill building out of the game, um, then it's certainly there to be had. Um, if you're somebody who's autistic, for example, you're looking for ways to read social cues better. Um, that does exist in the game, and you will find that by studying game. With that being said, inevitably, if you learn too much, or if you stay around the culture for too long and allow it to permeate, um, you will you will be exposed to, um, a plethora of manipulation tactics and poor attitudes, towards women, um, for sure. Question two, it says, from your perspective, what's the single most useful social skill somebody could take away from studying the pickup arts? Something that still holds up even outside of that culture. I said body language, just a general understanding of body language, um, a better understanding of what interest versus disinterest looks like. And that can help you in multiple facets of life, whether it be sales, which I'm not a huge fan of, but it could also help you in job interviews, and it could help you in caretaking as well, to recognize the difference between, what, you know, interest versus disinterest looks like, in a person's body, even in the subtle body languages. On the flip side, what's the most damaging or misleading lesson you see people picking up from PUA culture? Um, the most damaging, um, or misleading lesson people pick up in the PUA culture. Um, I put it's hold on one sec. The idea, and then we attracted to right. So I said the most damaging or misleading is the idea that we as men need to come in with a perceived higher value than women that we are attracted to. Um, I said I understand that women's attraction circuitry, for the most part, aligns them with men who are of equal or greater social status, but the way it's framed in the game forgets individuals' inherent equality, right? So women do, by and large, uh, date sideways and up on the social status scale, and that's documentable. That's verifiable. That's measurable. But with that being said, it's a socio-economic scale is different than inherent value, right? So don't mistake the fact that they like more successful men with the fact with the idea that they like men who are more valuable intrinsically than they are. You're not more valuable intrinsically than any of the females that you're approaching. You're both equals in that right. And so there's that. Too many of it is like, oh, I'm better. I'm my shit done. Anyway, so question 4 is says, if someone asks you how do I avoid falling into that toxic mindset while still improving my dating skills, what would you tell them? Um, I would tell them to do what one of my first chapters in the book suggests, which is to get a life before you get a life. Get a life before you get a wife. Um, become somebody that you're proud of. Um, set goals for yourself. Be somebody who's constantly trying to improve. But with that being said, also don't be afraid to ask straightforward questions such as like, do you have a boyfriend? Do you want to hang out? Um, women are pretty graceful in saying no if you allow them to. Um, if you don't overreact. Um, but and on the alternatively, you'd be surprised. Like if there's even a little bit of attraction, you'd be surprised how willing a woman is to just say yes to like hang out, you know, and do something. Um, so don't be afraid to ask if you feel that spark. If you're getting that look, then just if you want, just ask. You know, hey, what do you do for fun? Oh, I know this place. We could do that. Um, you busy next weekend? Um, so question 5, if you had to give listeners one practical exercise that they could start this week to build authentic confidence outside of any PUA tactics, what would it be? Um, they begin working out and and setting long-term goals, working out to build that self-efficacy muscle, which I talked about in a previous episode, which means you condition yourself to to believe that you're somebody who can get ish done. And how do you do that? You do that by having examples in the past of you getting ish done. And one of the best ways to do that is to consistently work out on even on days that you don't feel like it. Um, the more times you're able to do that, the more examples you have to reflect on. Like, you remember that day I really didn't want to work out, but I did? And so this builds confidence. This builds self-efficacy. This um also set some long-term goals, right? I truly believe that a person cannot sustain happiness without a goal, without a direction. I don't think like you could be in a bubble and then the maid cleans your room every day and you get whatever like whatever food you want to eat and whatever video games and whatever movies and whatever vices, um but you don't have uh ambition towards anything, you don't have goals towards anything. I don't think you can sustain happy. um and you're just a different person. You're less swayed by bullshit. Like, you're less things, people's opinions of you matter so much less when you have like a goal that you're pursuing. A little shit doesn't bother you as much, right? Question six says a lot of PUA material talks about openers and negging. In your view, are either of those useful, or do you think they cause more harm than good? Um, yeah, like I said here, I think those two are completely different things. Openers are necessary. If you're trying to open a conversation with a stranger, um, even somebody that you know. I don't enjoy conversations with strangers, which is another big part of the reason that I only stayed in this for as long as I did. Um, but negging is uh, backhanded, is a form of backhanded compliment, which I wouldn't necessarily mind if they were said in a way that retained their joking intent behind them. But I do not like them being used as statements that are said in all seriousness for the explicit goal of lowering the woman's self-esteem to make her easier to seduce, because that is the goal behind it, is to lower her perceived value in her own eyes relative to yours, and so that increases your chances. I don't mind them as like forms of like teasing. um and we'll get into teasing a little bit, I think, in one of these. But um yeah, you know. Question seven. It says the PUA world also pushes the idea of DHV, which is a demonstration of higher value. Do you see that as a helpful concept, or do you think it feeds into the status game trap you mentioned earlier? Um, and I said I think it's a brilliant concept, but something I can't unsee. Um, when somebody has a story embedded with uh, DHV spikes, um, me personally, I automatically see them as a bloviator or a showman or a narcissist. I feel like if you're living your best life, then demonstrations of higher value will be a lot more subtle. and you don't have to explicitly embed them in stories that you're telling about yourself and your experiences. Um, you don't have to say, yeah, I got a call from my friend Jim, and he was in trouble, and I jumped in right away and I sped to his place because that's the type of guy I am. I always help my friends out. And when I got there, Jim was getting jumped by these dudes, and there were some bad hombres, and I wasn't gonna let that happen. So I started swinging, and me and Jim, we took care of him. And then my girlfriend called me. She just got done with her photo shoot, and she was like, "Hey, babe, should I bring the Lamborghini or should I bring the Ferrari for tonight's trip to Las Vegas?" And I was like, you know me, babe. You know what I'm saying? Like that's you don't gotta do that. You don't gotta do all that. You know what I mean? Um and just um yeah, like if you live it, if you're about it, it'll just show through. Like it'll just That's the thing. Like you can fake congruency, but like if you're congruent, then you don't have to. You know what I'm saying? Like you'll never fake congruency 100%, but if you're congruent, not only you get 100%, you don't have to fake anything. It's like, nah, I'm just being me. Like I understand the rules, and I'm playing by whichever ones I feel like playing by at the moment. But you can tell that there's substance behind me. Like there there's an essence. And that's the mindset. That's the mindset. Um, and question 8 says, another staple in PUA teaching is the compliance ladder, getting small yeses to build towards a bigger one. Do you see that as a natural social skill or as a manipulative tactic? Kabaka, kaka. I said I see that as creepy as all fuck. If it's being done intentionally, like if you're trying to build a compliance ladder, I feel like that's mad gross. But like it is something that plays out naturally and organically. Um, but it I also always say like it's important to know how to lead and to know how to follow. So you can take that for what it's worth. Question 9 says many PUAs swear by canned routines and memorized lines. Do you think those have any value for beginners, or are they just crutches that hold people back? I answered. I said, more commercialized bullshit. Um, now that you mention retrospectively, this was I one of the sticking points in my game. I could not get myself to spew canned routines or memorized memorized routines, regardless of how effective they could be, while still knowing that it was just a script that I was running. I apologize. Like I was struggling reading that one because I had entered it in a voice prompt. So when I answered the question, I answered it um, by speaking into the speak to text, and it didn't pick up all the words properly. And you guys know, like, if it screws up like 2 3 words, like it can really like fuck you up. But um yeah, I mean, look, I never liked like canned routines. I think I advocate for my readers to have stories to tell, to have stories about like things that have happened in their lives that they can like call on in social situations when needed and stuff like that. Um, but um, and I think I even gave them the green light to develop those stories. But I don't like using uh I don't like using canned routines. I don't like using scripts in pickup. Um, as effective as they could be, sometimes like you use the same, and I used to, I used to use like the same lines and the same routines on chicks, like different chicks, like, and you get used to using them and you get better at them and you get like used to the timing just like a comedian, and like before you know it, like some of these routines, some of these stories, like they're really hitting the spot. What I mean? They're really making people laugh and stuff like that. But um I don't know, it's performative. It's that's not, I mean, get on stage if that's your thing, but um to each their own, right? Um Question 10 says the community often pushes an abundance mindset. Act like you've got options, don't chase. Do you think that's genuinely helpful or just another fake it till you make it trick? I said I think people could get carried away with it. Um, they can start walking with their chest a little bit too puffed out. Um, but in reality, we do all have options. You have the option to be celibate. You have the option to settle for women that you might be looking past. Um, but to act like your shit don't stink in front of women who clearly make your heart flutter, that's inauthentic, and 9 times out of 10 is going to be picked up on. Question 11 says, negging aside, do you think teasing or playful banter has a place in attraction or should it be avoided altogether? And I said, I think it's almost a must. I don't think there can be attraction without playful banter, at least occasionally. It's just about knowing your partner's threshold. Um, a lot of critics say PUA culture encourages seeing dating as a status conquest. Do you think that mindset is still embedded in modern dating advice or has it started to shift? I said, well, my expertise when it comes to the pickup community revolves around state of the affairs in the 2005 timeframe. I feel like the community disappeared for a long time during the Me Too era and the PC era. Um, and it's just recently started to come back over the past handful of years. Um, I don't exactly know how where the community stands in regards to status trophies today. But I can guess that not much has changed. One of the things back then um, was this idea of having women as like notches under your belt and lay counts and stuff like that. Um, which to me is extraordinarily tragic. When you're talking about sex, you're talking about an intimate act that should be engaged in with like love and connection and stuff like that. And like it's not just the pickup community that like doesn't really see it that way. Like it's men, women, like mad people in society just they see sex as just like, yeah, you just fuck. Like, what do you mean? Like, you just fuck. Like, it's just it's just hot. Like, you just it's fun. You just fuck people. Like, okay, you know what I'm saying? And so, but like, and I think women have kind of taken that from men recently in the past handful of years as well. Like, before it used to be like a status thing for men, like how many how many lays they got, and then now it's kind of like a lot of women are using that as like a status thing themselves, and it's like, dog, like it, it's funny, a lot of the sexual, like a lot of the most recent wave of feminism is just like copying like what dude's attitude used to be around like promiscuity and like casual sex and stuff like that. You know, and that like they just took the dude's mentality and now they're rocking with it, and so that's kind of funny. Um, because so 13 says, looking back at your own journey, what's one lesson you took from the PUA world that you've completely rejected? Something that you'd warn your listeners to never adopt. I just say don't lose your humility. As much as confidence is attractive, um, vulnerability and humility can and will melt a woman's heart when embedded within a strong-willed man. If you're a competent, um, authentic, grounded, strong, righteous, loyal, hard-working man, and you can show your humility, your humbleness, and vulnerability when appropriate. Like, hey guys, I can't move this boulder up this fucking mountain. Can I get a hand? That makes you that is a key. Like that like I said melts their hearts and does other things to them as well. You know what I mean? And and then it says if someone came to you today and said, I'm thinking of diving into pickup artists material to improve my dating life, what would your honest advice to them before they start? Um, um, it's important to recognize that not everything is applicable, and uh, it's important to not lose your humanity, not lose your empathy, and to extract what's useful and throw away anything that doesn't respect the woman as an individual. I just thought of this now. It's not in my lines, but that was my approach to a lot of people like the 48 laws of power or whatever. And it's just like not everything is applicable. Not everything is applicable, and not everything is right. You know, just take, what makes sense. You know, just take it for information at face value, and then kind of try to see what's still morally relevant and stuff like that. You know, um, and then the last question, it says, if you had to sum it up in one sentence, what's the difference between the game as the pickup world teaches it and the game as you would teach it. And I said it's the difference between a narcissistic approach to dating and relationships versus a humane one. And that's the mic drop on that topic for now. Um, Again, I know this is a topic that um, is nearing dear to a lot of uh, younger viewers and stuff like that, and younger listeners. And again, this is not the episode for me to promote my products. I told you guys I would have an episode at some point where it's just all about like the products that I offer and things like that. Um, but yeah, I mean, I've written two books on dating, geared towards, one was geared towards young men, and the other one is geared towards the mental health community. So yeah, Ecudez17 at yahoo.com. Send me your questions, um, and or concerns, and I'll be more than happy to kind of um, give you my give you my 2 cents on some of these things. Okay, and so with that being said, I wanted to typically I start off the episode with the news, uh, with the news things, and then I go into the topic of the day. I did that a little bit backwards today, just because I didn't want to start off with a topic that was really upsetting to me. And I know everybody else is talking about it, and I don't want to. I've actually calmed down a little bit now since then. Um, and so I don't want to raise the temperatures. And this is why I'm glad I saved this to the end of the episode. I don't want to raise the temperatures. I don't want to raise the anger in society. That's actually the last thing that I want to do. But to me, and what happened on that bus in North Carolina is unacceptable. That woman got stabbed in the neck, and it's unacceptable. It's unacceptable, and it's like, oh well, you know, um, we we have to be a nation that is full of vigilant defenders of the innocent, and a nation that locks away violent offenders. And that's what we need. It's non-negotiable, right? I don't even like prison. I don't like prisons. I think we should figure out something else. I don't. But all these reform programs and stuff like that, like, I'm all for, like, trying to save people, trying to help people, trying to, like, divert them into, like, the right path. But yo, we know for a fact that narcissists, or we believe it to be a fact at this point, that narcissistic personality disorder cannot be cured. So that means, furthermore, that some individuals cannot be fixed, they cannot be saved. Some psychopaths, some murderers, some rapists, some stabbers, some shooters cannot be helped. And these individuals need to be outside of society when they're committing violent crimes. And that's point blank, period. Me, along with X amount of other compadres, are sick and tired of repeat offenders. We are sick and tired of light on crime policies. Period. I get that this stabbing was one incident, and it was one incident out of how many people rode the train home that night in America and didn't get that day, that night, and didn't get stabbed. Yeah, millions, right? And so I get that, but at the same time, the dude had a rap sheet, and that's far too common of a phrase. Like that seems to always be the case. Like every time somebody violently murders and like rapes people, they almost always have like, if you just got rid of the people that have like priors, like heinous priors, then probably half of our murders would disappear. And then on the other side, on the flip side, we need people to like help each other. Like everybody lives in their own silo in their own world and stuff like that. It's like you might not know what to do, but like, stand up for what's right. Like work together. Oh damn, she just got stabbed. That's wild. Damn. Anywho, um, so this is, I don't know if this is supposed to be a lighthearted story or not, but apparently search and rescue dogs got, I read a little thing, and it was talking about how like search and rescue dogs were getting depressed and like demoralized during like 9/11 um because like everybody that they were finding was like dead and stuff like that. And so they so some of the workers staged like fake rescues where like they would like pretend to be like buried and stuff like that, and so the dog could find them and like gives them hope and stuff like that. And that just speaks to so many different themes, you know um you know demoralization versus hope. And but then again, like with everything that I've said this whole episode, like if you take me to the extreme with my uh quest for authenticity, you could be like, hey, that's manipulative. You know what I mean? That's not an authentic strategy. You're lying to those dogs and stuff like that. And I'm like, ooh. But is it manipulate? Like, I guess it's still manipulation, but I guess that's like a positive manipulation. You're trying to like, see, that's one of those philosophical like conundrums, right? You believe in the truth, you believe in authenticity and stuff like that. I know it's just a dog, and it's just like a cute little thing they do with dogs, and it's no big deal, and then I'm over analyzing the hell out of it. But it's just another example. Like, you believe in truth at all costs, but like you believe truth to be like the highest virtue, but are you gonna tell the gunman that your family's like inside the house? You know what I'm saying? And it's like, well, no, that's stupid. But then what if like you really do believe in truth? Like you extract that like as heavily as you possibly can, and you're like, yeah, so I will tell the truth. He's like, is there anybody else here? Like, yeah, my family is upstairs. And then he doesn't shoot your family because you were honest. But like, if you said no, and then he goes and then he shoots your family because you lied and you pissed him off. But I don't know. It's like that's one of those things. Like, how much do you believe in truth? Like, how, can you bend truth for the greater good? And then who decides the greater good? And then the happy dog is the greater good. The happy dog must be the greater good, right? I think that's the moral of this entire episode. The happy dog must be the greater good. And so, on that note, y'all have yourselves a good week and don't do anything I wouldn't do. And until next time, goodbye.